A very warm welcome from the Conscious Leadership Academy. This is the second webinar out of a series of 5 we planned for 2024. And a very warm welcome to you to this webinar. This is called Navigating Change, Disruption and Progress. And the last time in our webinar, we talked about the upcoming AI challenges, and it's very clear that all the organizations have to transform soon. Some more, some less, of course. And organizations are made of people. So the people have to transform. And one of the most requested trainings is around this topic. So how to guide people successfully through these disrupting changes. This is exactly the topic our expert Regina will talk about today. So I hand over to you, Regina, and please enjoy.
Thank you. So also from my side, a very warm welcome. This will be a very interactive session. So I would highly recommend that whenever you have a question or you disagree with us, that you raise your hand and or write it in the chat so that we can respond and have a discussion about it. Since we have only 90 minutes, I would like to go straight into the agenda to give you a brief idea what we'll be talking about today, because 90 minutes is not a lot, but we try to cover at least as much as possible so that you get a good idea how can people transform. So what have we planned for today? We would like to speak with you or share our knowledge about what makes a successful transformation or change. We would also like to look into why do so many transformations and change programs fail. We also spend a little bit time on the differences. What is actually a change? What is a transition? And what is a transformation? And how do they interrelate? And then we dive deeper and focus on transition. What is it exactly? And we also would like to go a little bit deeper and look at the different phases of a transition. And we also spend a little bit time on looking at the whole topic of change and transformation from the lens of change management and also from the lens of transition management, so that you get an idea how the two of them can work brilliantly together. And we also spend a little bit time on the emotions along the way, because this is usually a topic which is very hard for leaders to deal with. But since we are talking about change and it's quite disruptive for many people, emotions are also a part of it, and we should spend some time on it as well. And the last thing is that I would like to spend with you also a little bit time on the most important human capacity for every leader when you have to guide people through a change or a transformation. And at the end, we'd like to do a wrap up and also do a little bit question and answers, or actually you can answer your questions immediately right ahead. Then we can, you don't have to hold on to the end. Just as already mentioned, raise your hand or write it in the chat, then we will address it immediately. Okay, so then let's jump into the topic. And I have my first question for you. When do you consider a change as successful? And it would be very interesting, when do you say a change is successful? Any ideas?
Share your ideas in the chat or just open the mic and let us know.
It's when the change is lasting.
Yes.
When the effects of the change last.
Yes. Thank you.
Anybody else?
For me, it's when the identity has shifted to the new, So the example when I was much younger, much younger, in my early 20s, I had attempted to stop smoking. And in that first week, it would be like, oh, I've just stopped smoking. But that last time, when less than a week from the last cigarette, was the identity was, I don't smoke. And yet not a lot of time had elapsed, but I was pretty clear that it had been done. So for me, it's when the identity has shifted.
Thank you.
In the chat we have from someone from the National Mentorship Movement, when people involved feel they are growing from the change.
Okay, thank you. So let's have a look. A change is successful when the people affected do things differently. This is a very simple, it's put very simply, but what we mean by that is when people adapt to a new situation or the new reality they find themselves in. And the key is really adaptability. And McKinsey did, by the way, a survey about company lifespans listed in the S&P 500. And in 1958, big companies lived for 61 years. In 2016, when the study was done, the lifespan was already down to 18 years. And they predicted by the end of 2027 that 75% of these companies will be gone. So why will they be gone? Because they potentially don't adapt as fast as possible. And maybe also some names ring a bell for you. Lehman Brothers, Enron, Blockbuster, Compaq, BlackBerry, Yahoo. All these companies were highly successful, but they are all gone because they did not adapt. So adaptation is the most important thing when it comes to organizations and people. So now I have another question for you. What are currently your biggest change challenges? Let us know. With what are you struggling with, or what are you dealing with?
Can you move the slide, Regina?
Yes.
So, yeah, thank you.
Indeed.
You can scan the QR code or you go to slido.com and enter hashtag 978532.
Too many changes in parallel. Yes. Organized opposition movement. Yeah, people resist the change. Yeah, resist the new development. What else?
There's an answer in the chat as well.
And leadership missing, change ideas.
Meeting with emotions we have in the chat.
My career or financial future. Yeah, that's often a big question for people. Expectation that everybody should be enthusiastic about the change. Yeah, we will talk about that for sure later as well. meeting with emotions. Yeah, emotions are involved, and we will explore why they are involved. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. So what do you think? Why do so many change projects do not deliver the expected outcome? You could share your thoughts in the chat. So just briefly.
Or just let us know, open the mic and let us know.
If that's easier, yeah.
Maybe all your change programs are a success. The expected outcome has never been really described. So it's often only a feeling of not meeting the outcome. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Change of expectations. Yes.
Yes. Especially for a change manager or for a interim manager. Serious. Yes, definitely.
Okay.
The goalpost gets moved. Okay.
So why do change programs fail? Depending on who you ask, between 70 and 90% of the change programs do not deliver the expected outcome. And what you can see on the screen right now is a Harvard Business Review study from 2016, and 442 business executives responded in this study, and 86% shared that they execute multiple change initiatives simultaneously, and 91% say that change initiatives failed in the past. And they also shared that there's a disconnect between our expectations around change and the reality. And when we look at the feedback, you can see 62% also shared about poor communication, 54% shared about insufficient leadership and support, 50% about a lack of understanding of the purpose of the change, 50 said it's about organizational politics, and 45 shared a lack of people buy-in, and 40% said a lack of collaboration, and 23% only said it's insufficient budget, and 17% shared insufficient time. So when we look at this, we can also distinguish a little bit that quite a lot of it is based on human interaction. So this is a tricky aspect when it comes to change. And what we observe is also when we look at change programs, quite often is we can see a lack of guidance and support related to the transition of people. So this is why, from our perspective, quite often change programs fail. And now I would, like to align with you a little bit our terminology, at least for the next 90 minutes, so that we are all on the same page and talk about the same thing. And let's get started. What is a change? Change can be described as something external, situational, and it can happen relatively fast, and it is focused on the outcome. Transition, on the other hand, is internal. It's psychological. It is relatively slow, and it is a process of reorientation of thinking and behavior. And it is focused on how the change affects humans. A change example would be the pandemic, where we had to work overnight from home and even had to homeschool kids. And another example would be a merger, a reorganization, a new corporate strategy, a new CEO or a new leader, the movement to a new site, the launch of a new technology. And last time we had spoken about artificial intelligence. So also, how can artificial intelligence be implemented? This would be a big change. Or on the individual basis, it can be a promotion. And the transition, on the other hand, is about that people, when they're confronted with a change, feel uncomfortable in the beginning, but slowly they adapt over time. And we can also say that change is something that can happen to people, even if they do not agree with it. And transition is what happens to people as they go through a change. And there is no change without a transition, because both are linked. And you can describe them as the different sides of a coin called transformation. And a change without a transition would be a rearrangement only, because mindsets and behaviors do not change. A change without a transition would be like moving the furniture in your living room. But because you have moved the furniture, you're not living differently in it. Therefore, a transition is a must and not an option. Now I would like to share with you the definition of a transition according to Dr. William Bridges. Transition is a psychological process through which people go when a change occurs, or simply the way people reorient themselves to do things in a new way. And it's also important to understand that not only people and organizations transition, also families do. Let's just think of the birth of a child, the death of a loved one, maybe divorce or kids leaving the house. And also entire societies do transition. For example, when the eastern part of Germany was reunited with the western part, a whole society, the Eastern Germany society, had to transition to adapt and adjust to the new environment they found themselves in. So what I now would like to do is I would like to introduce you to the Bridges transition model. I was introduced to this model at INSEAD Business School, and I found it very useful to understand a little bit deeper the process through which people go through. And every transition starts when a change is announced to people, and it involves 3 phases: the ending, the emotional wilderness, and the new beginning. And every transition begins with an ending and finishes with a new beginning. And people move through the phases in their own pace. So there's no time scheduled on a time plan. And yeah, just let's have a look at the graph a little bit more deeply. On the y-axis, you can see the number of people. And on the x-axis, you can see the timeline. And when we start with the red line, in the beginning, you can see how many people are in the ending phase when a transition is announced or a change is announced. And you can see the majority of people is in an ending phase, and there are a little bit of people in the emotional wilderness, and very few are in the new beginning already. And people who are in the new beginning are usually those people who are new hires or who are hired to implement the change in the organization. And when we move along the timeline to the next red line, you can see how it's changing. Now, much less people are in the ending phase. The majority is now in the emotional wilderness, and still just a little bit of people are already in the new beginning. When we move to the end of the timeline, you can see now it has changed quite drastically. The majority is in the new beginning. Still, some are in the emotional wilderness, and a small proportion of people are still in the ending phase. These people who are still in the ending phase might be people who will not adjust to the new environment, and sooner or later, either they themselves or the company will decide to part ways because there's no fit there. And now let's have a look a little bit more what's going on in the ending. The ending is basically about the letting go of old ways, old realities, and identities. And here it's important to help people to deal with their losses and give them also space to grieve. In the emotional wilderness, this is more or less a time when the old is gone, but the new is not fully operational or feels comfortable yet. Here, people are navigating the unknown, and a lot of tension is rising. And it can feel as if the organization is breaking apart in the emotional wilderness. You have people who want to move forward very fast to get out of this uncomfortable phase. And you also have people who want to go back to the good old times. But in the emotional wilderness, the critical psychological realignment and reorientation takes place. Therefore, the change of thinking and behavior. And in the new beginning, people develop a new identity. They experience a new energy, and they also discover a new sense of purpose that makes the change begin to work. And all phases overlap, so they are not that clear cut as in this graph. And on top of it, you also have overlapping change initiatives, so referring to constant change in organizations. What is often a little bit misunderstood is that people do not resist change. What they actually resist is the ending and the losses they experience. And I would like now to invite you to think a little bit about a current change you are in or confronted with or guiding people through, and to locate yourself. Where are you in this transition model? In which phase are you in? Where is your team and where is your management? Just spend a time to sense into where are you and where is your environment? Okay. What we want to make you aware of is, first of all, something which is called the marathon effect. People start the transition process at different times, like in a marathon. And while the first batch is nearing the finishing line, others may not even have started yet or are still struggling. And what we can observe is that usually the senior management is in the first batch because they have been grappling with a particular issue for quite a long time. And when they are arriving in the new beginning, they often think everybody else is with them in the new beginning already, but they don't often see that others are still somewhere else in the phases, or are still in the ending or emotional wilderness, or even have not started yet. So it's very important to bear that in mind, because when senior management is arriving in the new beginning, they often also expect that productivity is going up. But that's hardly possible when the rest of the organization is somewhere else still in this kind of model. And we also want to make you aware of that all three phases go on simultaneously. So at every point in time, you have people in all three phases, and people need different support and guidance in each of the phases. Now let's have a look a little bit on change versus transition management to get an idea. What are the differences and how can they interrelate, or how do they interrelate? In change management, you usually start with an outcome in mind and work backward to create the necessary steps. Let's say you want to kick off a new organizational structure on 1st of July, then this is the goal, and you work backwards to make to create the necessary prerequisites to arrive there at the 1st of July. When it comes to transition management, people start from where they are today, and they need to be guided forward in the transition process. And there is no time set when they will arrive there. It depends on how big the disruption is, how much they have to internally adjust to the new environment. This is basically defining how long the transition will take, but it's difficult to say. And you can see it on the arrows, the major difference that the transition arrow is much longer than the change arrow, because when you start basically in your new role on July the 1st, you won't be 100% productive already, because you will have to learn, you know, what's your team, what's the culture, what is the political environment, what are probably also, you know, expectations, unconscious expectations on your role, which you're not aware about it. So you will learn and you will have to adapt to it, and you will get more comfortable over time. And this is how transition management and change management interrelate. One is more concerned about the structure, and the other transition is more about the internal journey of people. Now let's explore a little bit more the transition phases to get a deeper understanding what's going on in each of them. So the typical characteristics of the ending phase is it starts when the change is presented to people. Typically reactions are shock, denial, resistance, emotional turmoil, because people are forced to let go of something they feel familiar with or comfortable with. And the letting go involves old ways, realities, identities, and it's all about turf, roles, status, promotion opportunities, team membership, familiarities, values. It depends on the person. And people also have to accept that something is ending before they are able to invest in the new, because it's hard to fill a full cup with something new. And in this phase, they also grieve their losses. In the emotional wilderness, typical characteristics are it's a psychological no man's land. Old organizational structures and routines break down, and the new ones are not fully implemented, feel comfortable, and things feel chaotic. They move slow, and productivity is usually at the lowest level. People also feel quite confused. They are often very frustrated and full of self-doubt about themselves and their leaders. And the tension is rising. And old problems resurface in full size. So the good and the bad gets amplified. The trust in organization and its leader is also weakened, and people tend to send out their CVs, and you have also higher absenteeism. But the conditions are ideal for innovations in the emotional wilderness. Why? Because when rigid structures break up and everything is in the air, people are usually more willing to try new things and to question the status quo. And in this phase, creativity is absolute key to make use or to capitalize on the breakdown in routines and to come up with new ideas and solutions. Here, it's very critical to involve people as soon as possible in the change. Because when they are involved, they also tend to follow the rules much easier, the new established way of working, because they were part of creating it. And the emotional wilderness is also the heart of the transition process, because here the change of thinking and behavior takes place. What is typical for the new beginning? Indicators are a release of new energy in a new direction. In the emotional wilderness, people feel very stressed, and in the new beginning, you really recognize the shift in energy. It's very positive, very optimistic. It's also an expression of a new identity and the discovery of a new sense of purpose, so that the change begins to work. It involves new understandings, new values, new attitudes, and new identities. And the new beginning takes only place when people have gone through the emotional wilderness. This is a prerequisite. And they also have to make an emotional commitment to do things in a new way and also to become the new people. And the new beginning can only be nurtured. So their timings are not set by a date on an implementation schedule. And very often the new beginnings get also confused with a start. A start would be you kick off a new org structure at the 1st of July. And the new beginning is really when people arrive in that they become the new person identity, that they have adjusted their behavior and their thinking to the new reality. So these things are very different things. And it's important not to confuse them. So what do we see as potential pitfalls? We quite often see that in organizations, the endings in the emotional wilderness is overlooked or even neglected, because there's just a single focus on the new beginning, which refers to the transition, or the future outcome, which is basically the change. But all transition phases, all 3 phases are needed, because people at the end of the day need to do things differently, and they have to stop doing things in an old way. And to do things differently, people need to think differently by reorienting and renewing. And this thinking differently refers a lot to their identity, because what we think is what we do, and it has a lot to do of who we are. So I hope that gives an idea that transitioning is therefore not so easy for some of the people, depending on how they are impacted by it. Another pitfall is that a lot of people just focus on the tasks because there's so much to do with the change. But in every transformation, people's transition is the primary task, because you have to bring your people along, because somebody has to do the work. And therefore, we recommend to balance the task and people focus. And now I would like to dive a little bit into emotions during a transition, because usually we don't like to talk a lot about emotions in leadership, and also not in the business environment, but it's all over the place when it comes to change and transitioning. And we would like to share with you a little bit that it is a very organic process people go through, and it's not a box of Pandora which you open and don't get the cover on top of it again. So yeah, let's just see the most important things when it comes to dealing with difficult emotions during a transition are change can create an identity crisis. When we ask people about a change, they really very often say it makes total sense. They find it rational, but at the same time, it can threaten the self-esteem, their sense of security, and also their belief system, depending on how they are impacted by the change. And the change causes transitions, and the transitions causes losses. Therefore, it's the losses that people are reacting to, not the changes. And it's a piece of their world that's being lost, not a piece of yours. So what is at stake differs. So we are, you know, we identify with different things. Some people identify with promotion opportunities, their role, how many people they lead, how much strategic they impact the company, and others identify with a team membership or simply a way of working. So what is at stake really differs a lot. And it's important to bear that in mind. And also grieving over a significant loss is part of overcoming it. Are there any questions so far, Jan?
Not yet, and nothing in the chat, but we can ask. Is this clear? Sergius nods and says, all fine.
Okay. If you don't agree, let us know as well. Would be interesting conversation, of course. Okay, then let's move on. What are typical grieving reactions and emotions? Especially in the ending phase and also a little bit in the emotional wilderness, you can observe denial, anger, anxiety, bargaining, disorientation, temporary depression, and also sadness. And the sad part of it is that these emotions are often mistaken for a bad morale of people, but they're actually a natural sequence through what people go through when they lose something or have to let go something that matters to them a lot. And here it is really important to treat people's emotions seriously, but also to not consider that you have caused them, because they are caused by the change. And therefore, there's no need to get defensive or to argue. And it's also important to understand that in every group or larger group, not everybody feels all these emotions or go through them. But in any larger group, you can expect to encounter them all, especially in an established organization. And what you can do as a leader is you can help people to accept the situation and to understand that if they work through these emotions, they will move forward. Why do they have to work themselves through these emotions is because it's their limiting beliefs. They are basically confronted because of the change, and you can't do it for them. They have to do it themselves. And suppressing these feelings or pushing people to get over them, what we can observe very often in organizations leads to a handicapped organization with people who do not recover. And the consequences are low adaptability, low engagement, and also change fatigue. So when you announce a new change, you can very often see that people roll their eyes. And I mean, they would not say it openly. Of course, they would say, well, change is positive and will bring the best out for the company. But internally, they feel quite fatigued. And this is because they have not had the time to learn and to deal with the fact that there's something what they have to let go of.
Regina, we have one question in the chat. If you could say a little bit more about losing the self-esteem.
Yeah, the self-esteem is very often a thing. It depends where how the person is being impacted by, let's say, by the change. If a person, for example, if the role is at question, then people get very insecure. Or if they lose their knowledge, for example, then you have to see what is it what they are losing, and in a way, as a leader, you can help to give back what has been taken away. So it's very important that as a leader, when you recognize that, you really make sure to observe your people and to see for each of them, is there something what they are losing, and what might it be, and how can you give it back? Because the self-esteem is usually for those who might have to do a journey of adaptation in terms of skills, of mindsets. They will have to grapple with learning something new. And this can, for some, be quite hard on the self-esteem. And the self-esteem is also a big issue in the emotional wilderness, because when the structures have broken down and the new ones are not fully functioning, people also get a lot of mixed messages, which make them doubt themselves. But it's just, you know, how this kind of process goes, that everything is up in the air and it needs to be figured out how to find a new way of working. And the self-esteem is also you can support people in gaining back self-esteem also if you involve them in new tasks which fit for their skill set, or that you also help them to develop new skills so that they gain back their shattered self-esteem. But after the emotional wilderness, a lot of people are usually struggling with a little with the self-esteem, because all these doubts they have gone through. I hope this answers the question.
What we often see in the trainings is, when the people are sharing about these phases, is that they are telling, okay, earlier you have been the expert for the one or the other topic, and you have been very well known, and you had a cool image inside of the company. Suddenly you knew you need to move into a different role, and then the self-doubt starts. The people are really asking, am I good enough for this? I don't know what's really expected of this role. And then we have to support these people. We have to guide them through. We have to find out that they don't feel good enough as a leader. And then you need to support them. For some, it's just learning new skills outside something. For others, it's much more psychological to help them through. But this is a very, very important point, because otherwise they will not get back to full productivity. And this is what we see, because Regina talked about the change fatigue. In the change fatigue, it's really, there are so many changes happening again and again. Some of these people are really looking forward, hey, come on, let's at least rest for some time and settle down. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jan. And yeah, when it comes to this kind of low self-esteem, it's also very helpful that you educate your people and tell them about the transition model. You know, you can do it with your team, and you can also ask, you know, where are you in this kind of transition, and that you tell them, we will go through a time it's quite unsettling. It's not convenient, and when they know that this is a typical phase for them, that's typically a typical thing to experience in, for example, in the emotional wilderness, they will feel at least a little relief, because they recognize it's part of the process. It's not them, you know, it's part of this disruptive reorientation, when we have to let go of something and find something new, develop a new identity. And that helps a lot. And that's what we also recommend to organizations and teams, that they really sit down and talk about this model and say, well, but we are in it together. We all have to go through it in a way. That is also quite relieving and helpful. Okay, good. Then, what is the most important capacity for every leader when you have to guide people through a transition? there is one, and I would like if any of you has an idea what it could be. What is the most important capacity for a leader who has to bring people along and help them go through difficult emotions, or just, you know, tell them that they have to work through them? What do you think? Any ideas? Compassion. Patience, empathy, support. Yeah. Thank you. What I would now like to do is I would like to share with you a video about the difference between empathy and sympathy. It's a video from Regina Brand. She's a research professor at the University of Houston, studying courage, vulnerability, shame, and empathy. And she wrote brilliant books about daring greatly and rising strong. And I would like to share with you the video, and afterwards you can share with me your thoughts about it. So let's just look and get started.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time, because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
So any response to the video? Are we all clear about the difference between empathy and sympathy? So, yeah, okay, thank you. I just would like to remind quickly about 4 qualities of empathy, what Regina Brand mentioned in that video. It's take the other person's perspective and acknowledge that it is their personal truth. Avoid judgment. Recognize the emotion in the other person and communicate it. Feel with the other person without wanting to change the situation or fix it. Empathy boosts connection. And that's so important in a time where people experience a lot of friction, that they feel a sense of connection to their leader and also to the team. And that's quite crucial for them. And I also would like to point out that people do not want to get fixed. They want to be understood, especially when they go through hard times. And I once found a picture, and it was stating quite funnily that empathy is not available in the App Store. It's really a human capacity and also a need when we go through tough times. And even McKinsey says that when people are facing tough decisions, it's important that their leaders show empathy, because that helps them a lot to move forward and feel understood. And also, it's much easier to guide them if you know how they're feeling. And it's harder to lead people if you cannot empathize with them, because you have to bring them up, pick them up where they are to bring them along. And yeah. And what we want you to take away from this session is 4 points. We want you to take away from this webinar is that there is no successful change or transformation without the transition of people, because otherwise their thinking and behavior does not change. It's the rearrangement of furniture, but no change internal about how they approach things, how they think about things, and what they're doing at the end of the day. During a transition, negative emotions are part of the game, and they are not caused by you. And this is a very natural sequence of emotions they go through. To bring your people along, you have to guide them through all transition phases. So there's no shortcut possible. They have to really go through all 3 phases to make it to the new beginning successfully, so that they are really well adapted and adjusted to the new environment they find themselves in. And the last point is, please do not handle people like a technical problem, because very often we realize that there's, we want to manage people like a technical problem, but we are still at the end of the day human beings. And as long as AI isn't running fully our organizations, we are dealing with human beings, and we have to pay attention to their variety of needs as well. And especially when they have a tough time and they're losing something, that it should be allowed that they feel okay, not okay for some time as well. Yeah, so, and
thank you, Regina. I would like to bring one example. In one of our trainings, there was a lady that really, at the end, she was sharing, it's the first time that she understood she does not feel to be ashamed during a change or transition period or a transformation program, because she always thought it's about her. She is something wrong with her. And she now suddenly understood, oh, this is part of the process. When you lose something, then you have to move forward. You have to adapt. Of course, you feel uncertain and you feel the losses. And this is exactly this lady was in tears, and she felt so relieved about suddenly understanding, hey, there's nothing wrong with her. So I can only say that it's the most important point for the people to understand. It's really, this is normal. Yeah, this is normal. And for the leaders, the other way around, if the people are reacting or even overreacting, it's not caused by the leader. It's caused by the change. It's caused by the program. And it's normal for these people. We just need to take their hands and guide them. Thank you, Regina.
thank you. So yeah, we would like to thank you for your valuable time. Now I'm dripping over my tongue. And you have managed now the marathon of this training, and we wish you all the best for all the change transition management marathons you might be undergoing. And you know where you can find us. Just reach out. We are happy to help. And yeah, thanks again.